We've all heard about the awakening of consciousness, and perhaps some of us are in that state right now. A place where the veil of illusion begins to fall, and the truth about reality becomes clearer with each passing moment. But few speak of the dark side of this process. Spiritual awakening is not merely a journey toward the light. More often, it is a journey through the shadows. To awaken is not just to transcend suffering, it is to see suffering with new eyes. It is not just about discovering higher truths, it is about confronting the illusions we've built around ourselves. It is like opening a portal, one that does not only reveal light, but also the darkness we have long ignored. Behind every insight, there is a hidden layer of ourselves. Behind every revelation, there is a truth we have avoided looking at. Today, we will explore the forgotten side of awakening, the part no one talks about, yet every seeker must face. Because to truly awaken, we must not only embrace the light, we must also make peace with the darkness. There is an idea, almost a myth, that the awakening of consciousness is like a magic spell that solves all of life's problems. A promise of peace, enlightenment, and freedom from suffering. For many, awakening seems like a destination, a place of rest and relief where the struggles of the world can no longer reach them. A higher state of being where everything finally makes sense. But this is the first trap of awakening, and it is as subtle as it is powerful. This kind of thinking leads us to believe that we just need to reach a certain frequency, a state of enlightenment, for all pain and struggle to dissolve. It is an enticing illusion, a comforting narrative that turns awakening into a product to be consumed, an achievement to be reached rather than a path to be walked. But the truth is this: awakening is not about escaping pain. It is about seeing it with new eyes. It is not about eliminating problems. It is about learning to exist with them without fear. It does not remove the human condition. It amplifies our perception of it. This is where many seekers turn away. They begin their journey believing they will find bliss and certainty, only to discover that awakening demands something far greater: courage, surrender, and deep self-examination. True spirituality offers no shortcuts. It does not promise comfort, it demands transformation. And transformation is never without suffering. The first disillusionment of awakening is realizing that nothing about you disappears, but everything about you is illuminated. And sometimes what we see in that light is the very thing we have spent a lifetime avoiding. One of the first and most uncomfortable truths we face upon awakening is the ego's resistance to change. The ego, this carefully crafted identity we've built over a lifetime, is not something that welcomes awakening. Because awakening does not nourish the ego, it reveals its fragility. For those who seek spirituality as a way to exalt or elevate themselves, the journey will bring only frustration and disillusionment. The ego wants to believe I am special. The ego wants to believe I am above the illusions. The ego wants to believe I have awakened. But true awakening does not grant superiority, it demands surrender. It dismantles the false identity we have spent our lives protecting, revealing that we are not separate, not above, and not exempt from the human experience. To the ego, this feels like death. This is why spiritual awakening often begins as a crisis, because the mind, which has long clung to beliefs, absolute truths, and external solutions, begins to lose its foundation. This disillusionment is not a mistake, it is necessary. It is the stripping away of illusions. The removal of everything we have convinced ourselves is true about life, about ourselves, about spirituality. And this process is rarely gentle, because awakening is not a path towards self-glorification. It is a descent into the depths of everything we have refused to see. And what lies in those depths? Something most spiritual seekers are unprepared to face: their own shadow. When consciousness expands, it does not only illuminate the higher realms, it casts light on everything we have buried within ourselves. Most people expect awakening to reveal beauty, wisdom, and higher truths. But what they are not prepared for is the shadow. The shadow is the collection of everything we have, repressed, hidden, denied. It consists of the traits, emotions, and desires that do not fit the idealized image we have created for ourselves. The anger we suppress, the jealousy we pretend we don't feel, the fears we refuse to confront, the arrogance, resentment, and pain we bury beneath the surface. Most of us spend our lives ignoring these parts of ourselves, believing that by doing so, they will eventually disappear. But what is ignored does not vanish. It only gains power in the unconscious. This is why, during an awakening, the shadow begins to emerge, not to punish us, but to be acknowledged, integrated, and understood. This is where many turn away from the path. They believe that spiritual awakening is about eliminating negativity, but the truth is far more difficult. Awakening demands that we face what we have spent a lifetime avoiding. But why is this process necessary? Because the shadow is not just darkness, it holds vital energy, creativity, and parts of our true self that we have denied. To reject the shadow is to reject a part of our own power. But to integrate it is to become whole. Many believe that shadow work is just a complement to the spiritual journey, a side practice to refine oneself along the way. But the truth is this: facing the shadow is the journey itself. To awaken is not to rise above suffering, it is to move through it. To evolve is not to escape darkness, it is to understand it, integrate it, and transmute it into wisdom. The shadow often reveals itself most clearly in our relationships. Every person who angers us, frustrates us, or triggers us deeply is holding up a mirror to an aspect of ourselves we have not fully acknowledged. What bothers or fascinates us in others is often something we have repressed within ourselves. This is what Carl Jung called projection, where the parts of ourselves we do not want to see are reflected back to us through the people around us. The more we resist this realization, the more power the shadow has over us. If arrogance in others enrages you, ask yourself, where does my own arrogance hide? If you feel jealousy toward another person's success, ask yourself, where have I suppressed my own desires? This does not mean we must embrace every trait without discernment. It means that we must accept that these parts exist within us rather than projecting them onto the world. Because the moment we recognize the shadow, it loses its control over us. And that is the key. What is hidden dominates us. What is acknowledged becomes a tool for transformation. Spiritual seekers often believe that growth comes from rejecting their lower nature, from erasing flaws and impurities to become a more elevated being. But true transformation is not about erasing. It is about integrating. The shadow is not the enemy. It is not something to be destroyed or fought against. It is simply the part of us that has been denied, unacknowledged, and left in darkness. The more we resist it, the stronger it becomes. But when we face it, understand it, and accept it, it loses its power to control us. What if the parts of yourself that you have suppressed held the very energy you need for your awakening? The anger you suppress may actually be your ability to set boundaries and protect your energy. The jealousy you deny may reveal what your soul is longing for, but is afraid to pursue. The fears you avoid may be pointing you toward the very experiences that will set you free. This is why shadow work is not about embracing negativity. It is about liberating the energy trapped within unprocessed emotions. Carl Jung said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." This is the alchemy of the soul, turning the lead of denial into the gold of understanding. By facing what we fear within ourselves, we unlock the parts of us that have been waiting to be reclaimed. Integration does not mean we lose ourselves. It means we become whole. It does not mean we descend into darkness. It means we illuminate what was hidden. It does not mean we give power to the shadow. It means we take our power back from it. And that is the real path of awakening. But there is still one force that remains the greatest barrier to integration: the ego itself. And that is what we must face next. The ego, this false identity we have built over a lifetime, does not seek truth. It seeks control, certainty, and self-preservation. And when faced with awakening, the ego does not surrender. It fights. Because awakening does not strengthen the ego, it dismantles it. The ego wants to believe it is special. The ego wants to be recognized as enlightened. The ego wants to believe it has awakened while others remain asleep. But true awakening is not a badge of honor. It is a process of undoing everything the ego clings to. The ego survives by separation, by convincing us that we are distinct, special, different from others. It resists awakening because awakening dissolves this illusion. This is why the ego clings to spiritual superiority, believing, I am more awakened than others. I have reached a higher frequency. I understand what others do not. But the truth is this: awakening does not elevate us, it humbles us. The moment we believe we are above others, the moment we think we have arrived, we have already fallen into one of the greatest spiritual traps. Even when faced with its own illusion, the ego does not simply disappear. Instead, it reinvents itself, wearing a new mask, the mask of spirituality. The ego that once sought validation through success, power, or material achievements now seeks it through spiritual status, wisdom, and the illusion of enlightenment. It adopts a holy image, believing itself to be above the struggles of ordinary people. It rejects the human experience, pretending to be untouched by emotion, doubt, or imperfection. It turns spirituality into performance, using awakening as a way to feed its own self-importance. But this is not true transformation. It is just another illusion. True awakening does not mean escaping the self. It means seeing the self fully, without deception. And only when we see the ego's tricks for what they are, can we break free from its grasp. But what happens when we let go of the ego? Many believe it means losing themselves completely, but the truth is far more profound. Because when we release the illusion of self, we do not disappear, we expand. And that is the final revelation of awakening. One of the greatest fears of the ego is that awakening means losing individuality, dissolving into nothingness. But this is another illusion. To awaken is not to disappear, it is to expand beyond what you once thought yourself to be. The small self, the identity built from labels, beliefs, and personal stories, is just a fragment of a much greater reality. Spiritual traditions across the ages have spoken of this moment, this threshold where the self merges with something vast, infinite, and formless. The Buddhists call it anatta, the realization of no self, where the illusion of separateness fades. The Hindu sages describe it as the union with Brahman, where the self is recognized as nothing other than the infinite consciousness of the universe. The Sufi mystics speak of it as fana, the dissolution of the self into the divine, not as annihilation, but as total belonging. And modern science too begins to glimpse this truth, through quantum mechanics, interconnected energy fields, and the realization that consciousness is not localized but universal. At the peak of awakening, something profound happens. The walls of separation collapse, and we see clearly for the first time. We realize that we are not separate from the world, we are the world experiencing itself. We see that everything we once sought was already within us. We understand that we have never been isolated individuals, but waves in an infinite ocean of being. This is why true awakening is so rare, because it demands absolute surrender. The ego resists this moment, clinging to its last illusions, fearing that it will be obliterated. But what actually happens is the opposite. The self does not disappear, it becomes everything. The mind does not shatter, it expands beyond all limitations. The fear of death vanishes because it is revealed that we have never been separate from existence itself. This is the secret all great spiritual masters have tried to teach. But words cannot contain it. It is not an idea, it is something you must experience. And when it happens, you realize, you were never just a seeker, you were always what you were seeking. And so the journey does not end here. It never ends. It only deepens. Thank you for watching.